Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Decentering Men series. Today, I want to talk about how men are actually women centered. And this is why you should never be afraid to decenter men because no matter what we say and no matter what we do, men are always going to be chasing some sort of woman. He's either going to be paying a sex worker, he's going to be helping pay a woman's bills by looking at her on porn. He's going to be following a woman on Instagram, therefore, her Instagram will go up in the algorithm, making her more of a catch for getting brand deals. He's going to be watching movies that have beautiful women in them, therefore, those women will always be getting jobs. He will be advertised products. He will be desperately advertised dating apps by companies like Bumble, who are so desperate to try to keep women on their platform to the point where they have to try to shame and gaslight women into coming back on their platform because Bumble knows, oh shit, once the women leave, the men are not going to even get on the app. And the men are the main ones who dominate dating apps. We know that the dating app ratio is somewhere around 2 to 1. We know that on average, no matter which dating app you go on, that there are going to be majority men on there and that men will constantly chase after and flock to wherever the women are. And so it's to the point where men are so female centered to the point where most men, they can't even have just one woman. They have to have a girlfriend and then they have to still also have their orbit of female friends. Be sure to watch my episode on how most men actually just want a female cheerleader because that's really what their female friends are. You know, you're the one, you're texting him good morning, good night. In some cases, you're coming over and cooking and cleaning for him. So it's basically like he gets a girlfriend, except he doesn't have to put in any effort whatsoever. He just gets the free validation. Meanwhile, that woman is just spending all of her energy on maintaining that friendship because we know that men have not even been socialized to know how to maintain relationships and communities. And this is why men amongst themselves are actually very bad at building their own communities for men. But my theory is that men are actually women centered because if you think about it, the men who pursue money and cars and houses and status, why do they pursue those things? It's so they can have access to women, it's so they can be able to pay for more women, it's so they can attract more women, or it's so they can even dominate and subjugate women. So these are the types of guys that you see in the workplace who are extra mean to you. Let's say you're the pretty girl in the office. You'll see that that man is extra mean to you, or, you know, he wants to go out of his way to humiliate you. That's because for a lot of men, they're so female centered to the point where they don't feel relevant unless they have a woman in their presence, or unless they have a woman submitting to them, or unless they have sexual access to women. They are very centered around us. And so any guy who tries to make you feel devalued just for being a woman, he's gaslighting you. A lot of men can sometimes seek after relationships and marriages because they are searching for things like sex, they're searching for stability, they're searching for validation. Think about it. Even if a man does not involve himself with a woman at all, he will still be women centered because even the gay guys will flock to women. They'll flock to be friends with cisgender women as opposed to going and making all gay male friends. Even if you think of the LGBT men, they'll rely on their sisters, they rely on their mothers, they rely on female friends, whether that is to hang out with him, to plan his birthday, to hype him up, to encourage him. And this is because as women, oftentimes our inherent value that we bring just by being in someone's presence, we are bringing our nurturing capacities, we are bringing our planning skills and stuff. I mean, if you think about it, because of the oppression that women have faced throughout history, we have actually had to gain a lot more skills that most men were not socialized to gain. Because for a lot of men, the way that they're socialized is, hey, you just get a job, you know, get a family, and then that's it. Meanwhile, for women, it's like you have to be pretty, you have to know how to cook, how to clean, how to entertain guests, how to plan things out, how to be organized. Like there are so many soft skills that women are required to have because the standards in society for women are actually much higher than they are for men. A lot of men have been, I don't want to say they've been rewarded for mediocrity, but in a lot of cases, men seem to think sometimes that if he just has a job or if he has some money and he's tall, then suddenly he deserves a woman. And that's because men have actually been lied to by other men. And they've been told that if you get a degree and get a job, then you're going to automatically have access to women, and they're just going to come banging down your door, and we're just going to chase after these men who have these jobs. Another reason why men are women centered is because women are a source of pleasure for men. I can't really say the same in the opposite direction, but generally speaking, if a man has no access to a woman, like let's say a man had no porn, he had no OnlyFans, no Instagram, no girlfriend, no sisters, no mother, then he would have to face the fact that he is living his life being subject to another man. So this is something that most men don't talk about. Most men are actually spending their lives serving and submitting to another man. Most men are actually oppressed by other men. So if he's a man of color, he might be oppressed by a white man or the guy at his job. Most guys spend their lifetimes being yelled at and dominated by other men who have a higher status, a higher socioeconomic status, higher social status than him. And so, in order for that man to restore his ego, he needs to have access to women. And so, this is actually a part of the reason that I believe that society and the media brainwashes men into pursuing women and thinking that, if you just work for me, then you'll get a wife and you'll have a woman around you and then you'll finally feel validated. This is actually a distraction that the higher status men give to the lower status men in order to stop those men from creating an insurrection, because we all know that throughout history, men are the ones who have started wars with one another. And we all know that if you have too many men in a close proximity, that they will start being violent towards one another. They'll start becoming territorial. Usually they will be fighting over things that can attract women, or they will be fighting over women themselves. And so I actually believe that the men who are in high places in society have brainwashed the lower class men into revolving their lives around a woman, because those higher up men know that, hey, if I just give him a wife, or I let him have access to some sort of girlfriend, or if I convince him that he'll be desirable by all of these women, then I can distract him and get him to just sit down and do his work so that he can make me richer. And so I also feel like because women are often acting as a free therapist, a lot of the men in the higher positions, they like this. They like for the women to be there to kind of calm down these men, because they don't want all of these lower status, lower class men to realize how oppressed they truly are by other men. For most men, having access to a woman is the ultimate status symbol. And we know this because men make fun of other men and they call them incels. Men make fun of other men who are addicted to porn and stuff like that. They make fun of other men who have to pay a woman to talk to him, or pay sex workers and stuff. And I've noticed that sometimes the misogyny that we see online is because men, they hate the fact that they need a woman in order to feel good about themselves. Because if you think about it, there is a man who is having access to a woman somehow. So whether he's looking at her on porn, following her on Instagram, hitting her up in the DMs, whether he's arguing back and forth with women online, or talking about a woman, or complaining about the women that they can't have, as we see in the manosphere, that's really what they do over there in the red pill space. They really spend all of their time complaining about channels like mine, when my channel is actually geared towards women. And this goes along with my original talking point, which is that most men actually feel very irrelevant without women. And we all know that men's unaliving rates, their self-unaliving rates, are way higher than women, and that's because women on average are much better at building communities. This also goes back to my point about how a lot of men do not have the emotional vocabulary or the emotional capacity to create fulfilling relationships with other men. And so this is why they rely on us women to be their therapists, not to mention the fact that a lot of men do not know how to build their own self-esteem, which is why they rely on their female friendships to build the self-esteem for them. And, they need a woman to tell him, hey, that color looks good on your skin tone. Oh, that shirt really makes your eyes pop out. Oh yeah, that new haircut you got, that's really handsome. A lot of men, they don't really understand sometimes how to build themselves up. Part of this is because a lot of men have been raised to devalue emotions. So if you look at how the average young boy is raised in the household, don't even get me started on if he's a little boy of color or if he is raised in poverty, because in those cases, a lot of times both parents are working. because they're in 50-50 relationships, and they don't have time to really teach their children emotional intelligence. And so that boy grows up to think that going to work and coming home is enough, and then he complains when his wife asks him to actually sit down and talk to her and like have a nice romantic dinner with her. One thing I've noticed is that women are naturally a lot more magnetic, because think about it. If there are no more women on dating apps, then like men won't even go on the dating apps. If the club doesn't let the pretty women in for free, or if the club doesn't have women there, then the men aren't going to go there. Think about how they have bottle girls and stuff like that. I've never seen restaurants that have bottle boys. No, they attract the men by putting women there. And if there are no women there, then men do not associate it with status. Have you ever noticed how there are plenty of women's only gyms or women's only sections in the gym, but there are not as many men's only gyms, if any at all? That's because there are not enough men who are interested in being in an all-male space. If you open a whole bunch of men's only gyms, they're not going to be as popular as the co-ed gyms, because then the man, he doesn't have anywhere to go and show off his muscles and like grunt and make loud noises when he's lifting weights. He doesn't have anyone to solicit when she is running on the elliptical or running on the treadmill, because a lot of men do not feel any sense of relevance or self-esteem whatsoever without the presence of a woman somewhere, whether it's his own sister, his own mother, his female friends, or some woman that he's trying to get attention from. There are men out there who are so women-centered to the point where he will stop doing his workout, so he no longer cares about his health and his muscles and his flexibility. Oh no, all of that is out the window because Big Booty Judy is running on the treadmill, so he just has to go and walk up to you while you're on the treadmill. He just has to go and interrupt your set when you're lifting weights, because that's how women-centered a lot of men are. Notice how, on average, you don't see women just harassing men, trying to hit on men and trying to like beg guys to go on dates with her and stuff. No, it's much more common for you to see that in the opposite direction, because men want women way more than women want men. And this is why I think that decentering men is not a problem, because trust me, as long as you are a woman with a hole between your legs, and actually, even if you're not, you still are going to have value. Think about that. Even LGBT men or men on the DL, oftentimes they will get with a man who dresses like a woman and looks like a woman. Why? Because they are still attracted to women, and they associate womanhood and femininity with status. They associate that with building their own self-esteem. Some guys are so women-centered to the point where they can't have just one woman. So even if he's married to you, he still has to also have access to thousands of women on porn. He still has to have access to women on Instagram, and access to female friendships, and access to his female coworkers. That is him being woman-centered. Even if you look at the men who are the status symbols in society, every president, on average, has a wife. Every politician, they have a woman. Basketball players and NBA players, NFL players, all the sports players, they either have girlfriends. Rappers, they've got sex workers surrounding them. They've got girls surrounding them in the music video. So show me one man who is considered somebody of status who is an incel, or who was known for like being an incel. This is how much men are actually obsessed with women. I have talked to you guys about how a lot of men have no hobbies outside of video games, porn, and chasing women on dating apps. And so this is why places like Bumble are so desperate to keep women on their apps, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that there are women on those apps, because God forbid that men have less access to women than ever before. That would cause them to lose billions of dollars. It would cause even more men to harass women or to try to flock to the other apps where there are more women on those apps. Men can't even play a football game without having a group of pretty women in short skirts with pom-poms cheering for them. They don't care that there are tens of thousands of people in the entire stadium and the whole city is there. They don't care that there's a camera crew there. They don't care if it's on ESPN. They don't care if it's the championship game. They don't care if you're seniors in high school. There are college recruits there. Nope. They have to have the pretty women who are standing on the sidelines saying, "Go team, go," because that is the number one way that men have a sense of motivation and a sense of status. This is how female centered a lot of men actually are. There are guys who are so desperate to have a woman to the point where, in countries where they have a lot of low status and poor men, they will literally kidnap women. They will make those women their brides. One of the spoils of war was being able to take a woman from her family and make that woman your wife, or make that woman your slave, or make that woman have your children, or to grape that woman. And that is how women centered a lot of men are. There are some men out there who are so desperate for a woman's attention that I've actually heard men say that they would be flattered if a woman sexually harassed him, or if a woman was like catcalling him and like sending him a bunch of pics and stuff, because this is how desperate and how attention starved and validation starved a lot of guys are. It's because on the inside, a lot of guys, they don't know how to build their own self-esteem. They don't know how to have inner peace. This is why you hear men in the red pill space say, "Oh, she needs to be his peace." And it's like, well, wait a minute. Shouldn't he have a sense of inner peace? Like, what are you talking about? Are men just walking around here with inner turmoil? Because I thought that all of us were supposed to be peaceful and like mentally healthy. Like, why do you need another human being just to give you a sense of peace? That says something. And then, even if she is bringing you peace, you are still so obsessed with women to the point where you're greedy and you can't have just one, because the presence of one woman is so valuable. Imagine the presence of 10 women or 15 women. And this is where you get the guys who are like talking about being polyamorous or having all these different wives and stuff like that. And then you also get the men who are actually jealous of women, and they wish that they could trade places with you because they're jealous of the social status you inherently have. They're jealous of the peace that you have. They are jealous of the way that other men are looking at you, because remember, most men will spend their lives competing with other men. They will spend their lives trying to fight back and forth with other men, or try to have more status than the next man. And so women, because we are viewed as a symbol of status, a lot of low status men are very, very jealous of women, because that man knows, oh, if only I were a woman, then I would be more desirable. A lot of men are so women centered to the point where the women, you could have no college degree, you could be fat, you could have like your hair is broken off, your eyelashes look ratchet, and there's still a guy out there somewhere that wants you. And I know that we as women, we don't really view this as valuable, because in a lot of cases, men do not bring any value to the woman, especially if that woman is like not even attracted to him physically or emotionally or anything. But to a lot of men, because some of them are so empty inside and so vapid, and they're almost like this energy vacuum, because they're so empty, even being able to be a woman, they still feel like it's a better option than what they are right now. And so this is where you get those vicious men who are very jealous of women. They're especially jealous of beautiful women to the point where they will talk down on you. Maybe they will diminish your dreams. Let's say you're a beautiful woman and you're smart, and then your boyfriend wants to diminish your dreams because he can't handle the fact that not only do you have more inherent status than him because you're a woman, but now you also have more education than him or more money than him. And I've heard some men try to make the argument and say men love women more because they will stay with you, they'll never divorce you, they'll never leave you. And the reason that men will stay with women is because without that woman, that man would lose his stability. Most men seek after these live-in partnerships because they're looking for sex and also financial stability. So that's the real reason that a lot of men will stay in these marriages, because that talking point is actually right. Like most men, they won't leave, they'll just cheat. And usually if a man leaves, it's because he's got another woman on deck, because of course we all know that a lot of guys, they can't just be single and happy and not have access to any woman. Oh no, he's going to be single and porn addicted. He has two options. Either he has a girlfriend or he is jacking off to a woman online. Or sometimes he'll even be jacking off to a man dressed up as a woman online. So those are usually the only two options. A lot of guys do not have the same level of sexual discipline as women. And that also diminishes the men's power, because then women get to use sex as a tool, and, sex workers become rich. They can become richer than the men that they are serving. And so this is why guys also get super pissed and they try to call those women hoes and stuff. And meanwhile, these quote unquote hoes are running in circles around these men financially. Also, another reason that I say men are actually women centered is because of the amount of lies that a man is willing to tell just to gain access to a woman. It's crazy. And then this man, he won't even love that woman or anything, but because he is so desperate and so women centered and cannot be happy or satisfied unless he has access to said woman, he will come up with lies. A lot of men will do these crazy gestures just to show off. Like, I've seen men try to jump off of bridges or jump into a pool, or, they will do these crazy pranks and stuff in hopes of getting the attention of women. A lot of men will make up these grandiose lies about their financial status or about their job status. This is all to impress a woman. Men are actually women centered. Not to mention the fact that if it weren't for the women birthing these men's babies and like raising the children and doing all of this invisible labor in the home, then society as a whole and the economy as a whole would not even have these workers to work in the factories and to build up all of the economies of the country, because the main ones who are feeding and clothing and parenting those children who grow up to become those employees are women. We know that women are actually the default parents. And so women are the main ones who are training up the next generation of workers. And so this is why like women being child free is very threatening. This is why women decentering men, that's very threatening, because then it just exposes how desperate a lot of men actually are. It's also threatening when it comes to the higher status men, because then they're like, wait a minute, we need these women to keep marrying these men or to at least keep having babies with these men so that we can have the next generation of workers for our companies. Another way that men are women centered is because fathers tend to rely on their daughters to be their caregivers and to plan their funerals or to help them do all this stuff to like make sure they get their medicine and stuff. Even when it comes to people living in retirement homes, did you know that it's actually very common for old men living in retirement homes to still try to hit on a woman who also lives in the same retirement home, to try to get a girlfriend who's his next door neighbor because he's looking for a caregiver? That's another reason that men are women centered. This is also a reason why men tend to go after younger women. Not only do they believe that younger women are easier to groom and manipulate, but if that man is older, if he's like 65 and the wife is only like 45 or 50, he feels like he's set because he's like, yes, she's 15 years younger, she's stronger than me. Women tend to care about their health a lot more, and so she's going to be healthy enough to be my caregiver as I grow older. Another reason that men are women centered and they don't even realize it is that women are actually natural stress relievers. And I say that because when a guy watches porn and he's jacking off to women or men dressed up as women, whenever a man has an orgasm, it releases oxytocin in his brain. And we all know that a lot of men are not good at emotionally regulating themselves. They're not good at emotional intelligence and emotional regulation because they're just not socialized to be in the same way that women are. And so for him, having sex with a woman, jacking off to a woman, looking at a woman's beauty actually releases dopamine in the brain. And so a woman inherently, by just simply existing, is actually contributing to a man's stress being reduced. Not to mention the fact that a lot of men are very touch starved. And this is because when men are raised as children, you're not really raising your young boys and like snuggling up with him and like touching him a lot or hugging him and stuff like that. So a lot of men actually grow up to be very touch starved. And so simply having a woman's touch, that is also a way that a man can release dopamine. So men are actually women centered. Not to mention the fact that when it comes to loneliness, I've talked in other episodes about how most men have no social life outside of pursuing a woman or like going on dates with a woman or going to the gym where there will be women or going to a bar to see some women or going to a strip club to look at some women. Not only do they not tend to have a social life, but a lot of men actually feel extra lonely when they are not in the presence of some sort of woman. And this is because of that lack of emotional depth within himself. And so most men, they don't want to be left alone with their own thoughts. And so they use things like pornography as an emotional regulation tool. Not only that, but a lot of men actually need women in order to have access to more money. So, like I said, with the housewives doing invisible labor, which allows the man to focus more on his career, a lot of men, they don't even want to let women be able to be free with their sexuality. They want to come in and be the manager of the OnlyFans girl. They want to be the guy who owns the porn website. They want to be the guy who owns the dating app or the hookup app so that he can utilize those women as a commodity so he can make more money. These men, they want to be the owner of the strip club so that they can essentially pimp out these women so that he can increase his access to money. That is another way that men are actually women centered. Another way that men are women centered is when it comes to domestic duties, organization skills, scheduling appointments, maintaining family relationships. For a lot of families, once the mom dies or the grandma dies, all the cookouts stop happening, all of the family reunions stop happening because who's going to organize the family reunion? Who's going to plan it out and get the t shirts printed? Who's going to organize the money for everybody to get together? Who is going to rent out space at the park? Usually it's all the women in the family who are doing things like that. And so that is just another way that men are actually women centered. But what do you ladies think? Do you feel like decentering men is a threat, or do you feel like men are so women centered to the point where it really doesn't matter what we do, they are still going to try to find a way to infiltrate women's spaces because they literally just cannot live without us? What do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.